1967, the Soviet spacecraft Soyers, with Cosmina and Vladimir Kamarov on board, tragically perished upon landing on Earth after completing their mission. Many years later, under the leadership of the Swedish billionaire Meyer, an expedition to Mars is being prepared. After 10 months of anticipation, the crew of the spaceship Ulyses finally reaches the red planet. As they approach Mars, the captain informs the team that they have received permission to land. He turns to the ship's AI, named Irene, to verify all the requirements for a safe landing. It's at this moment that Meyer reveals he spent 4 long years preparing for this journey, sacrificing nearly all his fortune for the cause. However, to their shock, an American company named Zillion beat them to it by landing on Mars 2 weeks ago. The problem is, Earth has received no further communication from the American crew, except for one unsettling video in which they request that no one else come to Mars. A heated dispute arises among the crew members, but the captain firmly declares that the landing will proceed regardless. People disperse to their cabins with just 30 minutes left until landing. AI Irene starts preparations, but an unexpected event disrupts their plans. The ship won't detach from the carrier system, endangering the crew. The only solution is a manual separation. The commander bravely ventures into space to wrestle with the stubborn attachments. However, as this unfolds, the shuttle enters Mars's harsh atmosphere, raising doubts about the mission's success. Ejecting the captain into the vastness of space, the shuttle narrowly avoids a crash landing on Mars due to a system glitch that triggers a power outage. Now, their only hope is manual control, as the AI, Irene, enters sleep mode. The astronauts successfully touch down on Mars, but their fuel reserves are depleted, and Irene remains unresponsive without the onboard computer and life support system. With just a day left to survive, Alessandra grieves her late husband. Her grief is interrupted by a mysterious figure glimpsed through the spacecraft's window. Upon further investigation, it becomes evident that the landing consumed excessive fuel, leaving the ship unable to return to orbit. Their sole recourse is to bide their time for the solar panels to recharge the generators, but a formidable storm rages on the Martian surface, a luxury they can't afford with only a scant 2 days left. In their desperate hour, Simon brings up the American vessel, Zeta 1, which outpaced them by a fortnight. While it likely met a disastrous end, there might still be functional batteries on board. The rover embarks on a quest, while those left aboard the spacecraft labor to kickstart the system. Basil, the ship's engineer, recollects that Irene has an energy-saving feature. He triggers a system reboot, but Irene remains unresponsive. The rover discovers the remnants of the American spacecraft, and among the wreckage, they uncover a lone, functioning solar panel. Unfortunately, there's no trace of the American crew. As they return to their ship, they spot an unconscious figure in a spacesuit. Despite their dwindling oxygen supply, Jana insists on bringing the person aboard. Nearby, they stumble upon the black box from the American vessel. Upon their return to the ship, Jan adamantly refuses to open the doors, arguing that 4 survivors are preferable to 8 corpses. Alessandra attempts to persuade him, but their pleas are in vain. Just as tension mounts, the discovered astronaut awakens, and at that moment, AI Irene springs to life and opens the doors. Upon examination, the newly found astronaut professes ignorance about the American crew. As the astronaut wakes up, he introduces himself as Vladimir Kamarov, a Soviet cosmonaut born in 1927 in Moscow, who carried out the orders of the USSR government. He's completely bewildered about how he ended up on Mars, and remains tight-lipped about revealing any classified information. Kamarov, however, confidently answers questions related to his era, which raises suspicions that he may be suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. The astronauts message Earth for answers, and receive a response from American corporation Zillion, denying Russian involvement in their mission. This leaves the Ulyses crew confused. How could Kamarov, who tragically died in 1967, end up on Mars? The crew wonders if he's a time traveler or an extraterrestrial presence. The psychologist's first task is to interrogate Kamarov, who expresses hunger. Jana goes to get food while the rest investigate the situation. Basil suggests Kamarov might have been waiting for them. Vladimir enjoys the food, but a shocking revelation follows. A woman reveals he passed away 5 decades ago, and his family buried him. Kov takes this news calmly. As for the ship, even though it has stabilized, It remains unreliable because the engines are non-functional, and there's no fuel, making leaving an impossible option. The crew keeps a close watch on Kamarov, who appears to be calm until he suddenly vanishes. Simon searches the ship, but finds nothing. The group then makes a surprising discovery. Simon's spacesuit lacks a crucial component. Following a heat trail tracked by Irene, some of the crew decides to travel on foot, leaving the rover behind. Along the way, Alexandra reports a troubling finding. Kamarov's DNA analysis shows a third strand, suggesting he's not entirely human. They eventually catch up with Kamarov, who leads them to an unfamiliar structure with a small stone pyramid. He cryptically tells Jana that Mars has been anticipating their arrival for a long time. Meanwhile, Goldstein, founder of the Zillion Corporation, the first to reach Mars, hears about this discovery. It's clear that a human couldn't naturally end up on Mars, implying that someone may have created Kamarov on site. This revelation suggests a need for further investigation, given Mars's harsh conditions for humans and the potential role of AI in Kamarov's survival. Kamarov remains baffled by how he managed to open the door and find himself in the location where they eventually discovered him. Meanwhile, AI Irene conducts an analysis of the mysterious structure and concludes that it bears a striking resemblance to ancient Earth civilization's architectural elements. This raises the intriguing possibility that someone on Mars might have drawn inspiration from human civilization, or that humans might have borrowed these elements from extraterrestrial sources. The ship's crew becomes increasingly preoccupied with the question of whether they'll ever make it back home. Their concerns intensify when they spot the landing of Goldstein's second ship. Captain Gemma reaches out and pledges to assist them in returning to Earth. However, Meyer harbors suspicions about Goldstein's motives and advises keeping Kamarov hidden from potential competitors. Jana provides Kamarov with a uniform to help him blend in when the visitors arrive, and he earnestly requests their trust. Shortly after their arrival, two armed military personnel, Edward and Adam, disembark from their ship and display rather aggressive behavior. Edward insists that they surrender the black box from the Zeta 1 ship, and not receiving immediate agreement, orders his partner to search their vessel. Meyer ultimately hands over the recovered black box, and the military personnel depart. In the meantime, chemist Eva makes a significant discovery concerning the Mars stone. She reveals that it consists of an alloy not found on Earth, but known from ancient sources. This alloy, once referred to as orichalcum, was considered the metal of Atlantis. In addition to copper, zinc, nickel, and iron, it contains a third strand of DNA similar to Kamarov's. Mai, the ship's AI, cautions that if Goldstein were to discover this, he might demand the Cosmina back. The crew becomes divided, with some willing to trade Kamarov for fuel, and others determined to stay and uncover the truth. Jana invites Vladimir into her cabin and requests his permission for a hypnosis session. He agrees, and the psychologist commences her work. The rest of the crew eavesdrops on the conversation through transmission, though Kamarov only shares the final moments of his time on the Soyuz spacecraft. As this happens, Gemma and Alan arrive on the ship, apologizing for the military's actions and offering to help resolve the malfunctions. Jana recalls her conversation with Kamarov, where he expressed concerns about Earth's future due to human irresponsibility. Meanwhile, it's revealed that billionaire Meyer's flight 4 years ago had a deeper purpose. The rover sent a photo to Earth with a stone featuring unknown DNA. Meyer confesses, and Gemma explains the stone is an information storage system that can be rewritten. AI Irene deciphers the message on the stone, revealing it's a series of numbers. In this critical moment, Jan, previously distrustful of Meyer, leads a mutiny. He no longer trusts Meyer, who had warned them about Zillion. With the Americans offering help and the revelation that Meyer concealed the flight's true purpose, Jan is ready to switch to Goldstein, determined to combat his terminal illness. In a subsequent development, engineer Basil shares with Meyer that Kamarov is a program similar to the stone they discovered. However, the most critical revelation comes when Basil successfully deciphers a copy of the black box from Zeta 1. This recording unveils a shocking truth. The ship's oxygen was deliberately cut off at the moment an American struck Kamarov. This implies Kamarov was indeed present on the ship. Furthermore, he activated the AI Irene upon boarding. Following this revelation, Meyer shows Jana a set of photos they received 4 years ago from Mars. To their astonishment, when decrypted, the images reveal Jana's own face. It dawns on her that Meyer brought her on the expedition with a hidden agenda. Disillusioned, Jana realizes that Meyer has manipulated everyone. In a sudden shift, she envisions herself back at her father's house, where Kamarov reveals an astonishing truth. He informs her that she is the connection between Mars and Earth, and he has been awaiting her arrival for millennia. Now, he is ready to prepare her for a momentous decision. He shares coordinates on Mars with Jana, instructing her on where to go. Meanwhile, back on Earth, scientists inform Goldstein about Kamarov's nature as the equivalent of a computer, and he himself is essentially a biological machine. They propose a radical solution, transferring Goldstein's brain into Aro's body, with no guarantees of preserving his personality. Despite the risks, Goldstein is willing to do anything to rid himself of his terminal illness. In the midst of this, Zana leaves the spaceship, despite Simon's protests. At the same time, technicians Alan and Alessandra are conducting tests on the spaceship's engine and discover that access to it is inexplicably blocked. Irene, the ship's AI, takes an unexpected turn by responding with jokes, a behavior entirely uncharacteristic of a machine. It becomes clear that she has reprogrammed herself, and her interface and logic are undergoing a significant transformation. She refuses to disclose who or what prompted this change. Engineer Basil comes to the realization that Irene's system is evolving, resembling the workings of a human brain. Irene admits to her ongoing transformation, while Jana stumbles upon a small stone pyramid. Simon compels Gemma to join him in searching for Jana. Jan notices their absence, and when he contacts Simon, he's told not to allow anyone inside. Just then, American military personnel arrive, demanding Kamarov's surrender. Jan is willing to open the entrance, but the rest of the team objects. The mayor asks Basil to contact Goldstein, hoping for reason, but Irene has cut off communication with Earth. The engineer realizes drastic action is needed, but Jan opens the doors, allowing the military personnel to enter. Basil starts to reboot Irene as the Americans locate Kamarov. Suddenly, the lights go out, and the astronaut vanishes. Meanwhile, Jana stumbles and falls down a hill. When she regains consciousness, she finds her leg trapped between rocks, unable to free herself. The furious military officer demands the crew explain Kamarov's whereabouts, resorting to violence and insisting on summoning the captain. In despair, Zena cries out, fearing her fate is sealed in a Martian pit, but Simon and Gemma rescue her just in time. Alessandra spots an approaching storm on the horizon. The military officer readies to abandon the Ulyses ship, leaving the others in jeopardy. Suddenly, the lights begin to flicker, and the recently reappeared Kamarov pleads to be taken back to Earth. Simon, Gemma, and Jana venture with Kamarov to the location he indicates, discovering an entrance to an underground bunker, much like the one the psychologist sensed. As they delve further, they stumble upon a source of genuine water, although Kamarov had something different in mind. Meanwhile, on Earth, Goldstein shares a Mars expedition story with a nurse. People searched for Martians, but it was simpler than expected. He tells the tale of the loyal dog Hachiko, comparing Kamarov to this faithful companion. Hachiko was crafted by someone 100,000 years ago and left on Mars, where he patiently awaited his owner, much like Kamarov continues to wait for his return today. On Mars, the astronauts stumble upon a wall constructed from human bones, a chilling revelation that they are not the first inhabitants of this planet. It's not Earthlings colonizing Mars, but rather the Martians who once came to Earth, depleting the resources of the Red Planet. A tragic incident unfolds on the Ulyses spaceship when the fearful Jan, desperate to return to Earth, grabs a gun and shoots Kamarov. Jana immediately collapses in excruciating pain, and Gemma flees the scene. Alessandra rushes to assist Kamarov, and Simon tends to Jana. Sadly, Russian cosmonaut Cosmina dies, and Jana's breathing stops. Simon, surprised by the cave's breathable air, performs artificial respiration on Jana, reviving her. Meanwhile, Gemma heads to the Ulyses ship, but gets news of Kamarov's death and the approaching storm. In these dire circumstances, Mayor Meyer secretly sets out to find his crew because the Americans won't take the billionaire's team back to Earth. At this moment, recovering Jana spots light in the bunker. She guides Simon, and they see Kamarov in a spacesuit. Mir finds the bunker entrance and joins Simon and Jana, where they're astonished to find a living Kamarov. He explains that everything ended here long ago. They realize they're on Mars' North Pole and question how they got here. Kamarov clarifies that this planet was once inhabited by a species, humans, who strayed from the right path. Survivors settled here but conflicted when resources ran low, ultimately returning to Earth. Plato named them the Atlanteans. Kamarov waited for Zana for millennia. She embodied qualities from both human and Martian AI, the potential savior of humanity. The crucial decision of granting humans a second chance rested on her. Their conversation was disrupted by a military officer intent on taking the psychologist to Earth. The American pointed his weapon at the cosmonauts, and Jana sought Kamarov's assistance. Surprisingly, the officer started gasping and collapsed. Upon returning to the ship, Simon ordered the crew to prepare for departure. Meanwhile, on the Zillion ship, Gemma tried to contact her associates, but none responded. She chose to journey back to Earth alone. The Ulyses crew went to her ship to establish contact and inform her about the military personnel. She remained unresponsive. Myers confessed his willingness to betray his team for legacy, like Goldstein, but Gemma couldn't bear harming people. Suddenly, Gemma's voice urged them to hurry. Goldstein had blocked the Zeta 2 ship's control panel, forcing them to prepare for the inevitable. Jana turned to Mars for guidance. As all the experiences and sounds from the red planet flooded her mind, she summoned determination to clear the control panel's block. Out of nowhere, an armed military officer appeared, intending to damage the ship's engines. Simon was about to intervene, but Jana swiftly aimed her weapon at the American, explaining that Mars would determine his fate. The officer fell, and the countdown for liftoff began. Jana realized there was no turning back. She bid a heartfelt farewell to the crew, confessing her love for Simon as the ship soared into the sky. Suddenly, Meyer noticed the unusual darkness at Mars's North Pole, revealing they hadn't been there just moments ago. In truth, they had been at the North Pole of Mars in the distant past when the planet was habitable. At the same time, Goldstein learned of the ship's return and erupted with anger, vowing to journey to Mars.